Welcome to Travel Italia, the show about travel in Italy. Welcome to Travel Italia, the podcast all about travel planning to Italy. This episode is part 4 of my series on Lake Como. In part 1, I give you some general info about the lake and some history as well. In part 2, I talked about which months are best to visit, how to get to Lake Como, and then once you're there, how to get around the lake. Then in part 3, I described what there is to do and see at the lake. So today, in this episode, I'll talk about a few things to consider as you're looking for accommodations. So let's get started. So as you're planning your beautiful Italian vacation, I think one of the toughest things to do is choose accommodations. That's especially tough when it comes to Lake Como because the lake is just so enormous and there's so many choices. So how do you go about choosing a place when there's just so many to choose from? Well, let's consider a few things. First, let's talk about the search process. So most people, what they do is go to some kind of travel website and just type in Lake Como, right? As if it was all just called Lake Como. But Lake Como is made up of dozens of towns. So if you do that, some travel websites are better than others in their search results. It's okay to do that. It'll give you a general idea of costs and what's available. But really, I think the best thing to do is to just do your research and decide where you want to be, where you want to stay. Are you going to stay in one town on the lake, or are you going to spend a few nights in, I don't know, the town of Como and then go to the other side of the lake and stay in Varena? So deciding where you want to be is key because what you want to do is search by the name of the town, right? Like I said in previous episodes, the most popular place to be is that center area of the lake. It's called the Larian Triangle. And it's where the towns of Menaggio, Bellagio, Tremezzo, and Varena are. This is, I guess I want to say the most picturesque area of the lake, the most Instagrammable area of the lake. I hate to even use that word, but it's true. When you see photos of Lake Como, it's usually from these towns, this particular area. And I guess it is, it's where the two forks meet. And then you have Bellagio that is in the middle of the two forks. And it is kind of has the most dramatic beauty in that area. So, of course, it's very, very popular. If this is where you want to be, great, but you should know that prices are going to be a bit higher here compared to other areas of the lake, and that's just simply because it's a popular place to be. It books up well in advance for the high season being summer. In fact, it is February right now, 2023, and I just took a quick look at what's available for this summer. Sorry, it's not 2023, it's 2024. But I looked at what's available for this summer, and a lot of this area is already booked up. So that's just to give you an idea. So if you are wanting to stay there, do make your reservations well in advance. Or maybe you want to be near that center area of the lake, the Larian Triangle, but you want to save a little bit of money. So if that's the case, you could consider staying in the town of Leno or Osuccio on the West Fork or maybe Belano on the East Fork. All of these towns have ferry stations, so you can easily travel up and down the lake. So these are not the only towns. I'm just using some examples. These are a little bit bigger because you have, tons of small towns all around the lake. Some are much smaller than others. And so I'm just giving you examples. And when you look at a map, you'll see that there are many more towns in that area. If, on the other hand, you'd like to stay closer to the town of Como, Como is a great place to stay, but it is definitely a different vibe. It's more of a city vibe. Como is a real town with real people and real problems. So it is beautiful, especially the historic city center. But outside the historic city center, it's just your average town, nothing spectacular. But if that's where you would like to stay, there are tons of choices in the town of Como, close to the lakefront where the ferry landings are. If you want to stay just a little bit further from the town of Como, Chernobyl is a good option. It is, I don't know, maybe like a 5-minute drive from Como. You can get there by ferry, and so it is a really nice option as well. Now, if your dream vacation is to stay in a tiny town away from crowds, you have no interest in going to the center of the lake where everyone wants to be, you can do that really easily by staying in one of these tiny towns that I mentioned. There's tons of lesser known little villages all around the lake. But the problem is that some of them don't have ferry service, so they're a little bit harder to reach. Takes a little bit more effort, but nonetheless, they're there. I'm talking about little sleepy towns that don't offer much in the way of services, but they're very quaint, beautiful views, and you can obviously get away from it all. And if this is the kind of place that you just want to maybe work on a novel or relax, read a book, take walks, that kind of thing, there are plenty of towns to do that in. I'll just mention a few. I think Torno and Nesso on the east side of the West Fork. Those are a few. On the East Fork, I would say south of Varena, there's a few cute towns, Lerna and Mandello dell'Ario. Mandello dell'Ario, if you're a Moto Guzzi fan, as an Italian motorcycle brand, that is the town where Moto Guzzi originated, and in fact, they have their headquarters there, I still believe, and I know they have a museum. So if that interests you, then head on down to Mandello dell'Ario. If you're considering staying on the East Fork of the lake, just want to mention that the East Fork of the lake is less crowded and in general less expensive. The towns that I mentioned, Mandello dell'Ario, Lecco, Abbadia Ladia, there's a bunch of towns on the East Fork. They're quaint towns, but problem is getting to other parts of the lake from the East Fork is a little bit more work because the ferries do not run as frequently, and it's just a little bit harder to get to, but very beautiful. And if you want to explore that area of the lake, you're going to enjoy it with less people, obviously, than the center area of the lake. And the nice thing is that if you decide to stay on that side of the lake, on the east side, that there's a train line that runs the length of the lake. So from Lecco all the way up the lake, and most of the towns have a train station. So you can take a train from, say, Lecco to Varena very easily. And then from Varena, hop on a ferry or what have you. So that's one plus of staying on the East Fork is that train line. So let's also talk about budgets. If you're worried that everything around the lake is out of your budget, not to worry, because really the lake offers every kind of accommodation. So everything from Airbnbs, simple little hotels to 5-star beautiful resort. So for example, Villa de Este, right? This is where the stars, the elite of the world stays. And, it is been famous since the 16th century. So this is where Lady Gaga has stayed, and Frank Sinatra, Elizabeth Taylor, where Emily Blunt and John Krasinski were married. It's at the edge of the lake, and it's really 25 acres of just luxury. This is the kind of place that will do everything for you. They have every kind of amenity, any kind of experience that you want, but it obviously comes at a very high price. So the cheapest room at Villa de Este is a whopping €1,600 a night. Okay, so that is the high end of the spectrum. Then there's also a place like, for example, Albergo Villa Edi, just above the town of Termezzo. It's, a nice, simple hotel, and it only costs €177 a night, and that's in the high season. So there's plenty of small hotels, B&Bs, vacation rentals to choose from. On the lower end of the spectrum, I would say that the average cost per night is somewhere between 150 and 200 a night during peak season. So if you're going to go off season, you'll save some money. So mid-range, I would say 200 to 400 a night, and then above that, that's just luxury. So I hate to sound like a broken record, but if you're visiting during the summer peak season, you need to book your hotel months in advance. Another thing to consider for those of you who are on a tighter budget is to stay in a place that is not on the lakefront. So obviously, if you're going to stay in a hotel, a B&B, any kind of accommodation on the lake is going to cost more. If you have a lake view, obviously that's going to cost more as well. So if you want to save some money, maybe stay in a place that is a few blocks back from the lakefront, and there are plenty of those to choose from. In the show notes, I'm including 2 links. One is a recent article by Forbes magazine in which they list the 12 best hotels on Lake Como. This is a pretty good list from what I gather. They list different categories like best hotel for couples and best boutique hotel. It's helpful, but it is on the highest end of the budget spectrum. So I'm also going to include a link to Hotel Guru's website, which has a list of the best budget hotels on Lake Como, and this list is helpful as well. And they also have other recommendations on Hotel Guru's website. I hope this episode has been helpful as you consider where to stay. And if it has been, please subscribe, rate the show, and share it with your travel buddies. Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it, and I wish you a buon viaggio. Ciao.